So let's officially welcome you guys. This is a great turnout. We're very excited. I'm all kind of, hyped up here. And welcome back to Fly on the Wall presentations. This is a studio watch. Fly on the Wall studio watch is what we call it. It's kind of like you're on my shoulder as I'm doing work. However, tonight it's a little different because the focus of tonight, which is Winfrieda the lace polar bear, this would have been like the 12th installment. There's been 11 installments, not including the intro. So there's some of you guys out there that have been following me for weeks. The last one was in April. So I thank you guys for sticking with me through all of this. And tonight we're going to finish up. So there's months of material to cover. And since we have so many new people, I'm going to do for every week, there's a page of slides. So that'll add a little bit. I just want to get people, back to, I want to kind of catch people up. Also, since it's been so many months, I thought it might not be a bad review for you guys. For everyone that's been following as well, or maybe you've been following in blog posts. So anyway, let's see. We got somebody from Denmark, Heidi from Denmark. My sister's name is Heidi. And Roz from Maryland. We got Olympic Peninsula, Serena. Oh, and Ray is there. Hey, well, there's no way I'll be able to say hello to all you guys. But it's really pretty cool to see just this whole stream of people. Hey, Kathleen from Santa Cruz and Anita from Ann Arbor. All right. Oh, we got Donna from Tamworth, Australia, on Kingston, Ontario. We've got Jean. Wow. So Texas. So Grace is here. Wow, this is really great. So, and Julie, I already talked to Julie from Maine. You're on, Julie. Yay. Okay, you are here. All right. Oops, let me just get my hair. All right. So now back to the evening. I think what I'll do is get started right away. Now, if questions come up, you guys, as I go along, I have some breaks worked in where you'll see my cat, Ginny. So I've put her strategically placed because I take pictures of her as I'm working. She looks very cute as she's like curled up in all my fabric. And when you see her, that's when I'm going to stop and take a look at the chat. Okay. And if there's any questions I can kind of cover right then and there, that'll be great. Like I said, there's no demo portion of tonight, though I am going to give you a little preview of the next two Fly on the Wall sessions that we're doing, months that are coming up. Like I said, welcome to Fly on the Wall and welcome to the final episode of Winfrieda the polar bear. Getting right into it. When you guys at the last Fly on the Wall session in April, this is where we left off. So right here, hold on, I'm going to change my color. Let's do a red. So I'm going to do a little annotation here so that I can actually point you right out to things that we need to look at. So these two are the stages where I finished. And now Winfrieda is definitely in the second draft here. And then the other two, the close-up and the full bear, that's her finished stage. So you can see some of the differences are pretty obvious, but she's definitely in her second stage when I left off, which means that she's coming along. All her parts are there. There's been changes, but it's already been going. But what I'm going to do, I'm going to clear these things here, is go back a little bit to the beginning. Like I said, each of the weeks I'm going to do like a page to kind of cover and catch people up. So the very beginning here is the photographs. So I work from photographs. I had an idea that I wanted to do a polar bear. A lot of the things that I'm doing these days are kind of habitat oriented. they're animals that are having trouble surviving. And polar bears are one of them. And it's a habitat loss for polar bears. Their ice is disappearing. And I wanted to do something and I just wanted, my series has to do with animals in trouble, and a polar bear is one. So that was the reason why a polar bear. Now, the photographs that I got were given to me by Joel Davidson. Thank you, Joel and Marilyn. If you guys are out there or watching this, I really appreciated that. It really got me going, and it gave me something that I could work with. So I made a drawing that you see down below, and it's gridded. So that's how I was going to make her from an 8.5 by 11 piece of paper to an 8 foot tall by 4 foot bear. Over to the right, you see my cat, Ginny, is hanging out on some of the fabric. And those bins underneath are just a small portion of the bins that I pulled out of my mom's shed. Because when I told her I wanted to make it in lace, she said, oh, I've got all this lace that you can use. So I did use so much of it. And it was really cool being able to use some of her fabric in this piece of mine. And the lace, you can see just some of the lace scraps there in the basket. Now, getting started, the first draft is drawing the design. And like I said, I gridded, and then I gridded my design, and then the base fabric is also gridded. And in this case, the foundation fabric is the background. I wanted it a black background for a couple reasons. One, the lighter colored lace would show, the black would show through the gaps in the lace. And that was going to be part of my way of creating value, because more dark is going to make a darker area. Less more solid lace will make a lighter area, so I could give volume just by how I was using the lace. Also, the black background was going to be part of the story, because she's just kind of like losing ground. The polar bears need ice in order to survive and to hunt, and without the ice they can't hunt, and they're in trouble. So getting started is always a big thing. And here I wanted to use the lace in the same way that I use patterns in my fabrics and just the regular quilting fabrics or whatever it is that I'm using. And so I look for patterns to create contours, to help me create the image of my subject. So for instance, in this case, over here on the bridge of her nose, it's that Battenberg lace. So I cut a piece of it, and it made a really nice curve around the front of her nose. Then over on her eyes, let's look down here on the lower left. There was a great pattern that had some leaves in it, like a vine with leaves. And so those leaves really, it was like the right shape. It worked. So much of this worked so well. It was a right shape to cut along the center line of that little branch of leaves, and it made the curve around the eye. So I was really letting some of the designs in the fabrics, even though it's not a printed design that I'm so used to using it, I could still use the lace in a way that helped create the form. And I've never worked with lace before, so much of this was just trial and error. But I found that it was very similar in that way, just that it wasn't solid and there weren't any colors. One of the fabrics I want to point out here, and I think I'll remember to do it another time, but just in case I forget, down in the lower left again, the fabric a little lighter colored, that was from my mom's wedding dress. So I could put some of that in and tell her that I had used it. All right, and then on the lower right, just some of the fabric that I'm using. It just I had so much fabric, and for those of you out there who have contributed to the fabric, thank you right now, because I have used so much stuff that came from my mom, my own collections. One of the questions that I got a lot in the course of this of making this polar bear that I wanted to bring up at the beginning were her eyes. So a lot of people have said how much they really love her eyes, and it was one of those things that was so simple and happened so easily, where other things were so hard to do. So her eyes, I already talked about how I used, some of the design in the fabric to make the curves around. So basically her upper lids and her lower lids were made with the curves that I found in the lace. And then I was looking at it up here in the upper left. It was just this empty eyes. And I thought, I'm going to see if I can find something. And what I really needed was some little black. I figured, well, maybe I could find some circles of some sorts. And then I remembered that in my mom's stash, there was these two little circles, and there's only two of them. And I'm thinking, well, where did I put them? And I found them, and there it is right there in the center. And like I said, there was two of them, just two of them. And I slipped one of them under. If you look, you can just see the outer edge of that one, of the second one right there. It slipped right underneath the eyelids, and it was the perfect size. And then I thought, well, I need to have something of contrast, because you still really can't see the black on black. And then I looked, and there was this old kind of a lace curtain, and it had these flowered circles. And I thought, well, that looks about the right size. So I cut two of them out, and you can see one is slipped under the black, and it gives just enough of a contrast so that you can see it from a little bit from a distance, almost like there's little highlights or little coloration in the iris or something like that. So there in the lower left is her with her eyes. And, I never changed it through all the months I was working on her for, about a year and a half. And the last year, much more steadily. And yeah, that was just like a really wonderful thing that happened. And it was so simple. So it's nice when that does happen, when the simple happens. In a normal night for fly on the wall presentations, I start with where we ended from the week before, which in this case is going to be upper left here for this particular week. And then to the lower right is where I finished before the next week's presentation. And everything in between, such as the upper right, are some of the details and some of the process that I worked through. In this case, in the lower right are the kind of prep work that I've done in order to move ahead in the demo part. And so here now you can see her, this particular week, I'm working on her neck, giving her those nice big round folds of fur. After that, I'm getting into the shoulders, down into the arms. And what I realized is that original drawing that I did on the far left, I wanted to alter it, because I was having this vision of her just kind of standing there, kind of straight looking at us, not with her hands and her paws in front of us, but, going right down her sides. And I'd like to thank Frank Starrett. Sorry, Frank, I didn't get your last name in there. He's married to Mary McKay. So it's like me and Tom. We don't have the same last names. So it's Frank Starrett is the volunteer who provided me with this photograph to work from. Now, it's from a distance, it's a little blurry, but it gave me the idea that I needed. I already knew that I'm making this bear out of lace. It wasn't going to be a photo representation of a bear. And so I just needed the basics of proportion and shadows and things like that. So I ended up using a combination of photographs from both Joel and Frank. So thank you guys. You helped a lot. All right. Now I had what I needed for the arms. So I got the arms in place. And then after the arms was going to be her chest. So the way I work is that I want to do the things that are on top first. So the arms being in front, I needed to go first so that I could tuck the chest underneath the arms and start working with it that way. But I do want to show a little bit about the hand. So there was one of the hands, and this particular claw was like my nemesis throughout this piece. It was kind of odd, you know, so the photograph I was working from, which was also in Frank's photograph too, was like she had her hand kind of cupped a little bit, like the fingers were kind of splayed up. So it was kind of a little bit of an odd sort of angle, but I was going for it. I also thought that I could make the light parts of the digits, the claws there, as you know, using trims. So that was kind of nice. I got to use a different type of a lace that I had available to me. And you can see how I was using that for the highlights and then letting the dark show from behind to be the shadowed area. So it kind of gave the up and down of the paws. Now, the left-hand paw was a little more straightforward. It had just a nice little cupping movement to it, put together in the same sort of way. And here, the two on the left, the photograph on the left and the center, are details of what's on the right. So you can kind of see here where, let's see, if I go up to the top, okay, I'm on the left-hand side. If I follow up here, that right there is right about in here. And I've left this dark area here. That's the shadow. So that's something that I would deal with later. But it's what's on top. It's her arm, and then it's the chest as it moves down that defines that shadow. So I'm leaving a gap there to fill in later. And this details shows you a lot of the different types of lace that I'm using, and the different types of the star that's kind of in the center of the center photograph has a little bit of beading on it, has a little bit of a shine. So I was using things that are handmade. And then I was also using lace that I bought by the yard. And there was a little bit of sparkle here and there. And I was really enjoying this whole process. Then it's time to move down. So I had her chest kind of taken care of. Another week I was getting into the legs. I had to redraw, kind of refresh my drawing every so often, because what I was using on this black velvety fabric was actually chalk or soap, you know, like a soap that's kind of whittled to a fine edge, and I could use it almost like a drawing tool. And then as my hand went over it or fabric went over it, it would kind of flake off and kind of dust off. So, but that I found to be pretty safe for not leaving a mark if I wasn't quite on line with some of my pieces. And as I was drawing it, I could kind of change as I went, which happened. And when I was regrouping as far as her legs go and her hips, I did mark it for light, medium, and dark to give me a little bit of a head start with what I was looking for. And at this point, like I said, I was using lace that had more open areas for the darker areas. And then the light stuff was either lighter white or denser lace. And there's my cat keeping tabs. This isn't the break time for questions yet, though. But if you have questions, start putting them in. Okay, so here now, I'm finishing up her legs. Here you can see I've gotten her legs finished up, and now I could say that I'm at the second draft. So the second draft is when I've gotten everything down, and now I just have to finish up. And I'm sorry, fix up. Finish up is the third draft. So I put stuff down first draft, fix it up for the second draft. And one of the first things I wrote down is the shadow gap. So I already talked about how I left a gap there next to the arm and her chest. And there were other areas too where gaps happened, where I was going to have a heavier shadow. With just letting the black show through is definitely too much. So I filled in the areas with more translucent fabrics. You can see some of the stuff over here, like this area here has more of an organza in that area. Same thing is happening a little bit down here in that gap. So I was using different levels of transparency. Also, I was starting to use some black netting. And so with that, okay, here's some details that you can see better. So on the left is some of the gaps there on her chest. And then on the center is where I started filling in and adding some shadowing coming from the darkest part into the lighter part. And the black lace worked nicely for that. And in some areas then I ended up putting lighter lace on top of the black lace. And I was finding that I could add even more detail and accent certain lace in order to add more value and more range of value. There was also another fabric that was pretty cool that I found. It's in the center, I can show you, but it's these long kind of strands here. So that was a fabric that had little bits of sequins on it. So when you look at it from an angle or you look at it in low light, it almost looked like there was little icicles kind of forming on her, which was pretty cool. And toward the end, I was adding a little bit more of that for detail. And I would look at her in low light situations and kind of move around and see just kind of like an icy sparkle in the end. So one of the things I needed to work on was her face. So what I found is that I would work on a part of her and then pretty much exhaust myself or get to a point where I felt like this is about all I can do right now. Working in drafts is very handy because I don't have to get it all done start to finish. And I know that I'm going to be working in phases. So I was ready to go back to her snout, and I was also Tom had gotten me a scaffolding to use, and so sometimes I was up on the scaffolding and I was, didn't want to move too much. So it was nice then to take a break and work maybe on her paws or on her, her belly a little bit or something. And so back to her face, over on the upper left is where she was. And I felt that I needed to add a little more dark on the sides. So on the upper right, that's definitely messy, scary sort of dark, but I was laying down the base of some new dark to add some new light on top of it, which I did in the lower left. So you can see how by getting the base of some dark lace, it gives me a little more value change. There was a lot of trial and error on this nose, and where it ended up temporarily was the lower right. So I was pretty happy with that, actually. Things changed as I went along, but again, that was part of the process. Now here, what I liked with I'm continuing working with some of that dark lace, adding more shadow over to our left, her right side. So you can see where that dark is coming in on the folds of her fur, trying to show more form, give it a deeper fold, and then let the light show on top of that. So that's what you see happening, is some more of the dark shadows there. And here now is working on her hand again. So this is the paw that really gave me the most trouble out of everything else in this piece. And I think what it was is that there was a couple places here, and the paw is one of them, where there was a piece of fabric that I really wanted to use. And sometimes you get stuck on that. And in this case, it was the this piece right in here is like a little panel of kind of like an organza, but it had a little bit of a fluffy top to it. And I thought that was kind of cool. I really wanted to use that. But in the end, it just didn't work with everything else. It didn't play well with the other pieces. So I decided that needed to come out. And you can see to the right how I replaced it, because I really liked what was happening on the paw to our left. And that had a little bit of a heavier crocheted, it's like a doily or tablecloth or something. And that was, it worked. I liked it, so I repeated it on on our right. And so as far as that went, here now on the left-hand side, then I needed, once the top was done, I needed to kind of rework those, the claws as well, because I liked the way that that folded under, the paws folded under. And I got rid of the kind of splayed out fingers. So I went with what was working. So first draft, that left hand was working well. So fix up in second draft the other one to work in a similar sort of way. This is now the continuation of the paw saga. I could say that this is the beginning of the third draft, because when I get to a good point, I pause, like at the end of a second draft, or, I got that paw done. 2 weeks later, after I sat down with Tom and Sam, our son Sam, because they're both really good at giving me feedback. And one of the things, if you look down here, there's just a very innocent little thing that says, whoops, darn. Okay, that says mirror paws. That was Tom's suggestion. And I'm like, what do you mean by that? Mirror paws? And he really never liked this paw at all. And he even took it all the way up into the shoulder. He goes, what's happening in the shoulder? I don't understand that. And look, it's too long. So there seemed to be a lot of complaints about this particular arm. And when I really looked at it, it's like, yeah, maybe I don't like it either. So I thought, well, maybe he has something. So what I did to test, what he wanted me to do is basically create the right paws we're looking at it in the same way. He says, just mirror it. I didn't have it in a photograph to use. It wasn't exactly the same in any of the photographs I was using. So I took 3 sheets of tracing paper, taped them together, pinned it over that paw on the left, and drew it. And just drew some of the lines, and I was kind of, thinking about muscles and, how the arm moves when I did that, when I made it in the first place. So I just tried to recreate it. And then I flipped it to the other side. So over here on the left, you see where I now flipped it to make a mirror image and pinned it in place. But, the original hand is really distracting when you're trying to see how it looks. So I just took a piece of lace and I placed it right there alongside down here. And when you look at it from a distance, look at it close up and decide, does it look good? And I liked it. And I was like, okay, well, better now than later. I still had some time to work on it. And that's what I did. And that started then the deconstruction process of that paw that I had worked very hard on a couple weeks earlier. So what I did was I just started taking off some of the original hand and even moving some of it like over into the fingers. So by the time I got these fingers here, some of it was new, but some of it was just the old construction that I had done. of course I had glued it all down, and you can see all that glue right in here, but because it says all gets layered, it got cut off, it got covered up anyway. So I wasn't too worried about it, but I had glued everything nicely down. And that's usually what happens. As soon as you glue, you leave things pinned, then you're like, nope, I like it, I'm going to glue it down. And that's when the changes happen. So it was right on cue. And I kept the tracing paper is still there, so I could flip it up and down as I was working to make sure I was staying where I wanted to be. And then, let's see, then there was this big old gap, where the hand was, but I just started filling it in. It's a collage. There's so many that hardly, I don't know if anything is you can't recover from. And this was a really good example of recovering from a major change. And I just started filling in the dark, and here you can see filled in a little more, and really it worked out okay. Here now is where it was. This is the major change was the hand. So on the left is where the hand was. On the right is where it went. And there were still some things to do, but for a second draft, it's okay. I still have another draft to fix up things even better. And you can see here on the hip, whoops, got that wrong. On her hip, I've put a little bit of a trim right there, because I could already see that I needed to make her hip a little wider. She was now a little bit off balance. She was kind of like lilting over to her left, our right. So if I was going to make her mirror image, I was going to make her a little more symmetrical. And that was a reminder for me. So sometimes I'm doing things to say, hey, don't forget, this is something to do. Then back to my list. I also found that it was really fun to take pictures of her from odd angles. So, when you're standing below, so I'm just standing and looking up at her, and I take the picture, and it gives this really weird the view, which was kind of fun to play with once in a while. And here now, one of the things that the guys came up with in this third draft, this is the first page of the third draft. There's 3 pages of it in the end. If you look right under, let's see, where was it? Oh yeah, the neck, the black lines on the neck. So I think it was Sam that said, yeah, they look kind of like gills. And once someone says that, that's it. You got to change it. So yeah, I had to get rid of the gills. And for that, I just need to soften it. And of course I had, glued down a lot of those blacks at that point. But let's get ahead here. So here we go. Here's a sequence. And it really wasn't that bad, because I could leave the black. I was going to be a shadowed area anyway, so I could leave the black and then just cover it up with some of the lighter fabrics, the lighter weave fabrics. And I had used up in her neck, I had already used this piece. I'll do it right in the center. That kind of a webbed sort of, it was from a doily. And so I found another piece similar that I repeated there to go over the black. And then I repeated another little bit of it here, another little bit of it here. So I was learning how to put a soft touch, a soft shade on top of either the black or the light. And over on the right-hand side, it worked pretty good. Oh yeah, here we go. So yeah, that's me on my scaffolding. So once I planted my feet, I didn't move them until I looked around for the cat, because she really did like to perch now by my feet. And speaking of feet, if you look down here on Winfrieda's feet, oops, oh, there's the cat perching. Down on Winfrieda's feet, those are still like in the first draft. So at some point soon, I knew I have to get to the feet. But after the incident with the paw, I didn't want to deal with any more paws for a while, so I was back up in her head. We've got Ginny helping me here. And here's getting back into her face. So one of the things that came onto that list as well was taking another look at her muzzle. And Tom did point out that her face was maybe a little too flat looking. And he was right. Sometimes I kind of wish he wasn't right so often, but I think anytime you got caught up in something, I was so close to it. I was looking at it every day. And there are things that he could see that I couldn't. So I was bound and determined that I was going to keep this little medallion-y thing cut from a tablecloth. I'm gonna talk about the frayed edge. This one is one of those things that really could have quite a frayed edge on it. But what happens is that when I cut it and I place it, it doesn't really have a chance to fray. So that's the simple answer. I was wondering about that too, and it didn't matter. Things didn't fray unless you were handling it, and I wasn't handling it. I was just cutting and pinning, and to tell you the truth, fabric frays more than this lace did. It was really kind of weird in that way. And then as far as finishing the thought goes of this medallion is that it did still stay here in the center line of, but it was now more in her forehead, which actually made more sense too, because I had given her quite the divot on her upper forehead, and having that white medallion from the tablecloth really worked better there. It kind of made her forehead a little more cohesive, and that was good. And it opened up a darker area on her muzzle. So darker and darker color, darker value recedes. So it was helping her muzzle recede a little bit. But then I also wanted to bring out a little more dark on this our left side of her face, her right side. And I don't know if any of you guys that were here in earlier sessions, there was at one point a talk about a tea dyed or coffee dyed doily. And I was saying how my grandmother, and this bear is named Winfrieda after my grandmother. And my mom told me how much that her mom loved her coffee. And my mom loved her coffee, and I love my coffee. So it goes multi-generational. But anyway, the comment was, I should put a coffee dyed doily in here. And after that, I found a half of a coffee dyed doily that my mom had used in something else. And I'm so certain that she was the one who had dyed it, because she had talked about tea and coffee dyeing things. And I'm just so certain. And I really wanted to work this in because I saw this bear, a female bear, as a very matriarchal symbol. And so I wanted that in there, but you know, it does look a little bit heavy. It was too dark. So I had to lighten it up. You know, I had it split apart. There was the dark under it so that it had the dark showing through. And then I started layering it with some lighter lace. So this is again some of my mom's wedding dress lace, which is one of the lighter woven laces that I had. So that worked really well on top of that coffee dyed doily. And it's also on top of the black right there. So it is that fabric is going all the way up in there. And it added a very light touch to a darker area. So it helped make it not quite as strong of a shadow. And so here now is the muzzle that I think pretty much stayed the same to the end at this point. The doily, the coffee dyed doily, is still underneath a larger area here. So it still gives a shadow, but it shows up very nicely right there with some beautiful black coming through the crochet work. And And then my mother's wedding dress got in there, and it stayed a little shadowed on the left-hand side here. And I do believe that it worked pretty well when you look here from side to side. So the changes that are made is there in the muzzle, you can see quite a bit of difference. And on the right-hand side, definitely has a more pointed muzzle, which bears have quite a pointed muzzle. The polar bears do. In my observations of new observations of polar bears. And the nose got smaller too. So the dark of the nose, I didn't point that out earlier, but that changed to be a little more polar bear-like. And you can see down by the hand, I don't think, yeah, I did make a little bit of a difference in the shadowing by the hand. And I think that's kind of the major stuff. Oh yeah, and then the gills on her side. So that is a softened shadow as well. All right, so now we got we are in the third draft, so I think we're okay. We're actually in the new stuff now. I've well past catching people up, so this is all new stuff for everybody. Back to her feet, her rear paws, and what I noticed, I'm just going to go back one sec. Let's see if I can go back here. There we go. So if you look at her feet, it's both the same in both of these versions. They come down quite, they're not very wide, you know, so we're looking at foreshortened feet, which means I'm looking at large bare feet, but from the front, so they don't look so big, and they just didn't seem like they had enough oomph to support her. So I took some artistic license here. As far as a photograph goes, it almost looks like it ends in a peg leg. I mean, that's how straight and lumpy their paws are when you're looking at them from the front. But I needed to turn them a little bit. But the one on the left, I turned too far. When I stepped back to look at it, it looked like kind of she had like duck feet, that she was like pulled to the side. So that wasn't going to work. So I had to turn it a little bit towards us. So instead of just the 3 toes and 3 claws, you saw all 5 of them. It wasn't quite as long. There was a little more of a curve on the top of it. So I rounded out the top of her foot, you know, like the foot's kind of coming down like this, and we're looking at the top here, and that seemed to work well. So then I ended up repeating it on the other side. But before I do that, I want to point out on my third draft list, I had added a feather underside of legs, because there were some photographs I had seen when I was looking close at those photographs. They had the hair was really long and kind of flowed in the wind. So I wanted to kind of roughen up the underside of her legs a little bit. And I did here, I was listening to like these books on tape, like 4 different books on tape on the Arctic and the polar bears and all this stuff. I was kind of immersing myself as I was working on this. And they did say that polar bears have longer hair on their back legs. So I did add a little bit of that. It turned out in the end, it's the male polar bears that have more of the longer hair. But I was like, she's got some long leg hair too. That's okay. And on the other paw, this was really taking it down, total deconstruction again. So the upper left is where it was. Then I tore it all apart and elongated, and then added back in the little toe areas. There was one thing that I started, another little piece of fabric that I really liked, whoops, which you can call, sometimes you call these things that you really like your darlings. So I had a piece of darling lace that I wanted to use, and that was this one right here. So it had a really pretty curve. It was actually a collar. It was a lace collar from a garment. And it had this really pretty curve. I only had one. I only had half of it. I don't know what the other one happened to the other one, but I had that. And then I took it out while I was working on it, but then I added it back in the end. So I got it back in there. I didn't have to kill the darling. All right. And I'll talk more about killing the darling in just a little bit. Okay. Now I can advance forward. And here now are the feet. And I was so happy to have those feet done. I was sitting on the floor and it was really hard to get at it. It was very uncomfortable, but they got done. I was quite happy with them. And as I was working on those back feet and really looking very closely at how claws work on a polar bear's paws, I realized, and you can see just enough of the claws up here on her front paws, that I had done them wrong. So I had to go back in and work on those paws again. What I had done is I had seen them. I had seen the claws. I'd seen the dark in the photographs, and I assumed they were claws when really they were the gaps between the digits, and the claws were coming out of the center, so anyway, I had them in the wrong space. So what I did was filled in, hold on one sec, so I filled a little bit of dark in there, in where I had the so-called claws, and then lightened up the tops, like her paw tips, and that's where the claws needed to come out from. So that was but that got done, and I got it done on both sides, and they looked much better. So the claws hadn't been looking quite right to me, but I didn't know what it was until I went farther into understanding. So I guess that's something to pass on, is that if something doesn't look quite right, you might have to research a little bit and figure out what it is, define what's not working, define what's not working so that you can come up with a solution. And eventually the solution happened, and
Hold on.
and then I could move on to something else.
Grace is wondering what fabric you use for the black claws, lace or something else.
Okay, Grace, let's see if I can find my way back. Aha, okay. Is that the same? Oh yeah, here's this one. Yeah, this one here you can maybe see a little better too. It was a black lace, Grace. And I really had to experiment quite a bit to find it. And you can see where there's a pattern in it, and it's actually a floral pattern. There's a flower, and I was able to cut like across the petals of the flower, and it gave this kind of a striated look, so it wasn't so solid. Anything that was too solid didn't look right. It just, these are it wanted to have some sort of a pattern to it, and that worked pretty well. So once I found that fabric, I had a lot better time with the claws. And but yeah, that was something from earlier. I know Grace, who asked the question, I know has been watching all of these, been live on all of these different episodes we've done, and that was an issue at one point. What can I use for the claws? But it happened at the right time, so that worked well. And yeah, so if you look, there's a lot of pins. If you look on the outside, so when you see all those pins on the outside, it means that I just did a lot of gluing, because I would move them to the outside so I'd have them handy next time I wanted to use them. But those pins went in and out all the time. Let's see, is there anything else I should tell you here? I think that's good right now. The big part here was the claws. And then, oh yeah, I got a couple mood shots here. I just wanted to remind myself and to remind you guys, when I would come in the morning, this is walking into my studio on a sunny summer morning, and the light was a little different. I didn't have the lights on yet, the studio lights. Um, and there's Ginny Cat, you know, waiting for me. She really did like that scaffolding. And I found that I would see things in lower light than I would, than I, in a different way than I saw them when I had all the lights on. And so I kind of started getting into the habit of when I closed up at night, that I would take a moment and just kind of look back on her and see if there was anything that was popping out that I maybe should write down. And then here, over to the upper right is the second and third pages of draft 3. But you know, I only got halfway down on the 3, so I was, you know, definitely crossing things off or deciding I didn't have to change them. There's a lot of questions, so I would write a note and then question it. It just meant that I had to look at it closer, because I didn't change everything. There's some things that I was like, no, you know, that's okay. I'm leaving it the way it is. And the picture of Ginny down here is one that I particularly like and wanted to share because she was just curled right into all the fabrics I was using. And of course, she objected every time I wanted to use something that she found particularly comfortable. All right. For this, I had to go back to the ears. I went way back to point out the sequence of the ears. And it was really only first, second, and third draft. But the upper ones are the first draft. And this was something that I found that was just so cool. It was another collar, a lace collar. So this was, whoops, can't get that drawing quite right. That was one side and this was the other. So I only had those two ends of the lace collar coming down that I could use. But I was careful with the cutting, and it was perfect. It was almost the same size that the ears needed to be. It was just a hair bit of a artistic license taken, but I just loved how it gave this great edge, and I wanted to make sure I kept some of that. Some things got covered up a lot as I'm working with all these different layers. But as I worked on the second draft down here below, I wanted to keep some of that look, but it was kind of lumpy. You know, this side especially was a little bit lumpier than I felt her ears should be. Here now is the on the top is the second draft. So I just repeated it so you could see a little more easily. The two close-ups on the bottom are is this the third draft. So especially here over on the right-hand side, you can see that I've added some highlights and a little bit of shadow, like a little dark shadow tucked under there. So even in the ears, you know, I really wanted to give it the time and the detail work that, you know, I felt it deserved. And by putting that light there, it gave a very soft, so it kind of bridged the gap between those lumps. So I didn't have to cut the lacy stuff, the lumpy lacy stuff original off of there. I just had to smooth the edge a little bit with a different lace. And that worked out just fine. Here now, you got the third draft ears. So the ears are done, crossed off the list. And this is where Tom found something else. So he looked at the one on the left and said, why is her left side of the face so much narrower than her right side of the face? So it's on our right. So, you know, in reverse, it's our right here. So here it is from the nose to the edge. And here it is from the nose to the edge. I'm like, yeah, you're right. How did that happen? So, you know, all that drawing and flaking off of the of my drawing tools and redrawing. Something happened in there, but again, you know, collage, there's always a way out. And so what I did is I just added more stuff to this right hand side. So I think if I were to do this, let me because I didn't change the ear. It was so relatively simple. Here's one of these. Oh, there's that other side of the collar. Okay, there we go. There's another collar that's kind of right down in here. So if I use that as a mark, here it is over here. So you can see I just left it. It stayed where it was, but you can see how much extra I added over on this side. And that worked all the way up, because if I follow that line, it kind of comes all the way kind of like this. Definitely more of an angle coming down. So I kind of added all this stuff here and kind of fluffed everything else up. I added more fluff on the inside, and I added these really cool little beaded looking bits of lace. So I found some really interesting things to add in there. As I was fixing one thing, I ended up embellishing her cheek a little more anyway. So I was really happy the way all that turned out. It was all good in the end. So now,
Hey, Susan.
yeah.
Ross was wondering if the black in the ears was the same as the black for the claws.
Good question, Roz. See if I can get back. So you can see it right nicely in here. And you know what? That was one of the ideas that I had way back when. And I think I might have talked about it one of the nights. Because they kind of segment this lace. It was like it's a really thick lace, but it kind of segments into these kind of teardrop shaped things. But they were way too small for her claws. Her claws needed to be much bigger, like, at least twice as big, maybe even about 3 times bigger than those little wonderfully shaped lace was. So unfortunately, no, it would have been really easy to do that, but they would have been much more solid looking. So maybe it worked out better in the end anyway, but yeah, good question. So in this this photo, I'm getting really down to the nitty gritty of my list. A lot of things were getting checked off, and this one is kind of mixing a couple things up. I took you way back on the one on the left. This is way back in time, this one. That's why it looks so different. The currently where I'm working and really coming to the end, is the one on the right. But there was something that I had noticed, and Tom brought it up, and so I had to face it. I had to say, yeah, I've just been trying to ignore that. But what it was is that there's this area right in here on her chest that is darker, and it's because it's a beige color lace. And what it is the heart. So there's a heart under there. And I really wanted that heart. It was a darling of mine. And as she's coming together, and her right hands are as we're looking at her, the right hand side is much lighter. So that's her light side of her body. The left is her dark side of the body. And really what's happening here is that, the arms coming down, going into the shadow, and then coming up into the chest. And this should be light. It should be light like it is down there, but there's this dark spot because I was holding on to a beige heart. And if I go out of here, let's go to the next one. There it is. Now this is way back. This is like, a year and a half ago. But there's the heart. That is the heart. And it was my darling because I picked it up at a yard sale. There was a box of 25-cent things, and there's this, and that's the point. I hadn't started the bear yet, but I was collecting lace. And so here's this heart crocheted doily. And I was looking at him like, well, this is really cute. And the guy that was selling the stuff said, oh yeah, that's my grandmother made that. And I'm like, your grandmother made it? I said it was in the 25-cent box. And he goes, yeah, what am I going to do with it? We're moving to Florida. I don't want it anymore. You know, what do I do? And I'm thinking to myself, your grandmother made it. You don't put it in a 25-cent box. So instead I was like, okay, I'll take it. And I wanted to honor her. You know, this is somebody else's grandmother, but this was my Winfrieda bear, my grandmother, my Oma Frida. And so I was holding on to it. And I did what I could, you know, so here it is on the right-hand side. This is a detail of the bigger photo, but I was, you know, putting, whoops, I wanted to do, oops, wrong way. Okay, what I got out of my annotation here. So I wanted to, I mean, I was putting this light stuff here. I was putting stuff in here to lighten it up. I was obscuring it is what I was doing. And what I figured was going on was that it was on black. Since it went in so early, it didn't have any layers under it. So all I needed to do was lighten up underneath it and it would work. So I loosened up that doily because it was well glued down. And you loosen it up by spritzing with a little bit of water. So I had a water bottle and I spritzed it. It dissolves the glue and then you can kind of gently peel it up. So I peeled it up. And in that empty space, I put these little medallion stuff that I found in my mom's stuff from her dressmaking, her when she was putting insets, lace insets into garments. And I also had added another heart. So all right, so see, there was this heart up here too. So I'd added that in. I added all these white stuff in there. And I also found the Sunbonnet Sue medallion. And I'm not terribly fond of this whole Sunbonnet Sue name being named Susan, but just like I don't really like Black-Eyed Susans. The name, I wish they had a different name, but however, I found it in my mom's stash. It had her writing on it. I think she was playing with a label for a size. It says size 2 down there. So she was probably playing with the idea of putting this as a label, but it didn't work. But it was there. And she always talked about my cats too, my studio cats. And so here is a Sunbonnet Sue with a cat and my mom's writing. And I'm like, yeah, I'm putting this in here. And I did, I'll show you. And there it is over to the left. So see, I did work her in there. Kind of disguised. You really don't see her very well, but she's there. And I also flopped that heart, the other grandma's heart, into place. And yes, it's lighter underneath it, but it still shows up as being beige. So I said, okay, well, I'll just put light stuff on top of it again. So I put some light stuff on it. I put more light stuff on it. And it was just a mess. So I was like, this isn't going to work. Or it wasn't working. And then I tried pulling some stuff away again. And it was getting too complicated. It was the whole simplicity was gone. So I took it out. I had to kill my darling. It's actually a writing thing. I read it in a book by Stephen King. He wrote a book on writing. It's called On Writing is the name of the book. And I like reading these books on writing. I feel like I somehow relate it to what I'm doing. I like telling stories with my work. And when I'm reading books on how other people tell stories and how they write, I actually get ideas. And so it was like, well, if Stephen King can kill his darling, I guess I can too. I took it out, filled in the gap like I'd filled in other gaps when I tore stuff out. And it all was such a simple solution in the end. There you see on the left-hand side, it got filled in a little more. And then back over to the overall. And yeah, it was the light color that it needed to be. It was sticking out all along, but it wasn't until the very end that I finally faced it, took it out, and I have the heart. It will go in something else because I have really enjoyed working with lace, and I'm planning on doing more of it. It won't be right away, but I have another idea kind of developing, and the lace will be back. And so I'll find another place for that grandma's heart. But my bear has a different heart. And there's other hearts kind of hidden inside of her too, because this is it. This is her on the right-hand side when she was all done. You notice there are no pins anywhere on her. On the left is where she was at the last time that I kind of regrouped, and then, got her done. So how are we doing time-wise? Tom, are there any questions before I move into some of this other stuff?
Yeah, there's one question. Is your gluing technique the same with lace as with fabric?
Okay, yeah, I was kind of wondering about that too, to tell you the truth. And it is, really. Except it's more glue because the lace is much more absorbent. So I had to put more glue on in order to press the lace in when I was really doing the final gluing. And actually, you know what? I'm really happy you asked that, because something that was very important with this that I realized as I really got into the final gluing was that I was not sure how I was going to quilt her. So all along, I kind of figured as I work on her, the whole idea of quilting and how I was going to quilt her was going to come to me, which it usually does. But I was still kind of unsure. And as I was getting really into the gluing that last month, as I was starting to do it, there was times when these layers were so thick. Like if you look at some of the more the heavier areas, like right under here, I remember, and in her cheek, see how there's like the really white areas. You don't see much change in them. That's because there's so many layers of lace. And I'm pretty sure that if I could have taken a cross section, that it probably would have been maybe a 1/4 inch in some of those areas. And I started realizing, I don't know that I can quilt it. So I called up the curator who at the New England Quilt Museum, which is where she was going. So she was already dedicated to be there. And, my year wasn't really going as planned. And there was a lot of stops and starts in finishing her up. And I called her up, and and she's also an old friend of mine. I've known her for years. And it's like, hey, Pam, this is Susan. And the first thing she said to me is, don't tell me you're not bringing her. I'm like, no, I'm bringing her. But how would it be if she's not quilted? And Pam said, fine. She in our talk, she said it really should be called a fiber arts museum, because they have exhibits of fabric work that is not quilted. And so this collage quilt is not really a quilt, at least not at the moment. I might have to quilt her at some point, but
Somebody was asking how you plan on quilting, or do you plan to quilt her?
yeah, so that's still up in the air. Right now, she's done. She is a complete fabric collage piece of art. And but she has many layers of fabric, so she qualifies in that way, but the layers are not stitched together. She's got a backing, but there's no batting either. She's just on the backing. So I think somewhere down the road, I probably will quilt her, because I might want her in a quilt show. And so I'm pretty sure that she's going to have a backing and, maybe some flannel or something, but that have to be another, she has plenty of layers, let's put it that way, but there's going to be a backing. And, but right now she's stretched around the board, as I worked on her and as she's at the museum as well. And so, what that did with not having to really concern myself with the quilting, being able to put that aside, because I didn't know exactly how I wanted to do it, and I didn't want to ruin anything. And it gave me time to really get the collage finessed. And I was just so very happy how this all turned out in the end.
Don't you
There,
have pictures of her at the museum?
I do, yeah. So, but I think there's something coming up here before. Oh, okay. Here's some of the close-ups now. So as I was going through, I was really kind of, it's the fine-tooth comb, making sure I had everything where I wanted it. But she is well glued down. So as far as being anchored onto that base, there's not a piece on here that's moving off.
This is a good this is a good picture to answer a question. Can you talk a bit about how you did her nostrils?
Okay, her nostrils, yes, like black on black, which is pretty much the hardest thing. I know a lot of you guys out there, or those of you that are my students, noses, animal noses are like a big thing. And what I did is I did a really light touch with a little bit of metallic gold. So the lines that you see in here are actually some well-cut lace with metallic gold on the edges to just bring little bit of highlight. I didn't want to be super um, accenting or outlining her nose, but where from the photograph it hit light, I added a highlight with that. And then right at the end, right in here, there's just a tiny little highlight. You see there? That's half of a flower. The rest of it goes up like this, kind of goes up like that. But I cut half of a flower, a silver metallic thread on black lace. And it gave just a little bit of a touch of that very front of her nose. Okay, I wanted that should answer it. It was really relatively simple, and there's black lace every place else. So there's actually quite a few pieces in there. But it really got all lost. There's some really nice little pieces of contoured lace in there, but it really doesn't show up. Oh, here, another thing I can bring out. I really enjoyed, whoops, hold on. It's going to, nope. I gotta get back into annotation. There's a lace that I found. It was a trim right here, and I just cut part of it off. It had these big loopy scallops on it. And I really like that to give like just a hint of like the holes for, a little bit of whiskers or something. And this is, all in the area that got really like down in here. That is like super heavy. And if I ever do any quilting on it, I think what's going to happen is that I kind of do some very hidden stitching. Maybe I'm going to do it by hand, I think. And I'll just do it kind of in the darker, more shadowed areas. So it kind of pushes it down, but it's going to be a light touch. I'm not going to do my machine quilting. Well, I don't think I could. I think there's too many areas that are too thick for it. And here's a close-up then of her chest. That paw on the right, finally done. Sam did find one little thing to do right in the corner of her heel. So I did round that out a little bit, but after that, I was washing my hands of that one. There is, I had pointed out, whoops, shoot. I had pointed out earlier about this kind of metallic that kind of had a flow to it that I was getting in the chest. I came in and added more of that sort of stuff so that it almost looked like there was a little bit of wind coming on her. And so I had a lot of things that were kind of curving in that direction. And that became a little bit of a theme, a little way to add a little more embellishments, but, and it carried up, you know, kind of into her shoulder, if we could see more in the top, and then a little bit over here on this side too, a little bit here. So that was a little something that I added at the end to see if there was a little bit of a, all that fabric added that sparkle. And that's things that as I would turn the light off, the lights down, you know, all but one last light, at night, I would, sometimes I'd be standing there for like an hour, just adding these little sparkle things in the near darkness. But it was kind of fun. It was a different way of approaching and a different way of working on this. And then there's her hips and her legs. Finally seemed to get the right shape. Polar bear legs are very chunky. At one point I had them drawn that they were much more shapely, but really they're very chunky. That's another thing I learned. And then there's a close-up of the paw. You can see, you know, so many layers. But that's something that I really like. And that was really interesting. There's one point where there was a lot of layers. It was getting really thick. I was, you know, gluing stuff down, and I thought, you know, what I should do is get underneath as much as I can and pull something out. And the one time I did that, I had to put it back in, because one layer is so reliant on the next layer. When you're working with lace, it has all these gaps in it. I mean, if you were to look just right, I'm sure you can get the idea. Like, look right back here, right in the center. See, there's like that little beige sort of thing right there. If I take this away, that's like 3 layers down. But if I took that out, it would affect that dark area. You know, it would make that area in there look a little bit darker. And sometimes it made a difference. You know, I was putting in like, I don't know, there's one time it was like a piece of fabric that was like half of my little pinky fingernail. And it made this difference. At least to me it did, I should say. At least to me it did. And let's see. So I've got a few more things, just kind of wrapping things up with some final shots. So twice Winfrieda got out into the yard. Once was during a snowstorm in March, and I decided it was just this beautiful snow, and I was like, my polar bear needs to be out in the snow, because by the time she's done, there will be no snow out there. And so I just pinned the heck out of her. Tom took her out, got the picture. She came in.
Someone asked, someone said that they saw this picture somewhere. She was wondering how much it weighed.
Oh, Tom, what, 5 pounds?
Yeah, not much. It's
No.
There's a 2-inch board of styrofoam insulation as the backing right now when it's pinned to, but not much. Yeah.
Oh, and all her lace, all those layers, they're still small pieces of lace. So I doubt she weighs much more than a nice heavy tablecloth. So, and then on the last day, you know, as I was getting ready to, I had to take her up to my folks' house, because they have a big table that I could use for putting her onto, because I needed to use the lint roller on her, because there happened to be some cat hair on her, as well as some lint and cuts, a little bit of trim and stuff from the lace. Oh, I know something I wanted to say, because with the next photos coming up, I think I did mention that I saw her as a matriarch. And that was all part of the process of her coming together in my head. When I wanted to do a polar bear, I wanted to do a lace, I was using my mom's lace. And how she was standing was determined by a couple pictures that that my sister, from my cousins. This is my German grandmother right here with her 7 children. My mom is the one over on the far left. And this was one of the photos that my cousin shared, and it was in the process of making this piece after I had kind of gotten started. And this next photo was her with just her youngest. And the look on her face really struck me. And when I was thinking about a polar bear and thinking about how fierce they are in protecting their young, I realized that that's what I saw in my grandmother here. So this was taken right after World War II. And this is in Germany. My mom was German. And that was, as everybody knows, war is really hard on the women and children. And the look that I saw in my grandmother's face was she got her kids through. And this was a determination that I saw. And then when I got the bear finished and I was putting together the slideshow and I matched these two up, I was like, okay, I got it. I got that look. You know, my Winfrieda is, you know, basically staring us down, is kind of confronting us. And really all she wants to do is protect her children. But it's kind of up to us now, if how that's going to happen. And then I was using my mom's lace was the other thing. And so the combination of seeing, you know, of kind of thinking about my grandmother. Now my mom saw, you know, saw Winfrieda, and my mom's going, that doesn't look like my mother at all. I'm like, okay, mama, let's go back to what the idea is here. So yeah, you know, not a portrait of my grandmother, but you know, the spirit, and my mom's lace, and just being able to kind of carry just kind of this generational thing and the matriarchal thing, and then all these all those of you out there and everyone else who had shared their fabrics with me. You know, Winfrieda has wedding gown lace from at least 3 or 4 different ladies, and it has handwork by countless others, and then, you know, in the photograph on the right, that, you know, there's a bigger piece of my mom's wedding dress, so that showed up a few places. And then this is some sort of a, you know, hand crocheted doily up there. It was already falling apart, so I felt very free to use it. And anyway, so there was a lot of thought that kind of went into this whole thing. Some meaning that I hope gives it another different layer of stuff, different layer of interest. And when Tom would come visiting, he was always very tickled and interested in all the pins. He'd like, look at all those pins. How are you going to glue all that stuff? So he would get odd pictures of pins. And here's one of them, kind of an interesting angle. And I just love the way all those pins are in the background. This would have been getting close to the end as well. And then another shot here of one of my favorite views, just looking straight up at her. And there was another one coming up. So these two, when you talk about the background, the one on the right, where you can't really see the pins as well, it almost looks like an aura around her. Aura.
Yeah, we had somebody commented that they thought the pins looked, what'd she say exactly? A striking background.
Yeah. And it actually, and that did come up. And my sister looked at it and she goes, I think it's just to leave the pins there. And I said, well, that's going to make it really hard to transport or ship. I don't know that that's going to happen. But I definitely wanted to get, you know, photographs of it. And it's an idea, you know, I mean, I could beat it. There's a lot of, and so I'm happy that really happy that I was able to finish the collage and just let it sit for a while. And Yep. And then we'll see, see what happens in the future. Was there something else, Tom?
No, that's it for now. We got some questions, so let's not.
Okay. Well,
It's
I
getting late.
am almost done. Yep, I'm almost done. But these are a couple really fun stuff I wanted to throw in there because, again, odd angles on odd angled photographs. So, on the left, this was that was Winfrieda like getting ready to be the lint roller. So she was lint rolled. It's like she's just laying there ready for a massage or something. So, that actually took longer than I thought, getting all the lint off of her and the cat hair. But she got nice and cleaned up. And then on the way to the to delivering her to the museum, I was staying overnight with a friend, and so I unrolled her on my friend's carpeting, and then I got this other angle, which just gives a whole different, it's like a whole different quilt when you're looking at these things from this way. But those are just some fun stuff. And then she got there. I got her to the museum. There was a board waiting for me. I don't have a car that can take, this is a 4 by 8 foot board that she was stretched on. So I don't have a car like that. And so she was off of my board. And on the other end, my friend, the curator, had a board ready for me. And we just re-stretched her onto the board. I always wanted her to be standing as close to the floor onto the ground as possible when she was being viewed, because I wanted people to stand in front of her and experience her, because I made her 8 feet tall because that's the average size of a female bear. A female polar bear is 8 feet. The males can get like 10 feet tall. That wouldn't have even fit inside this museum. So, but anyway, that I wanted people to really experience that. And there has been, I've gotten a couple photographs from people that have already been standing in front of her. She's been there since September 10th when I'm sorry, September 12th when the show opened. So I don't have the final pictures of the show. This was as they were still assembling it. But here she is. She's kind of at the top of the stairs, moving into the gallery. And she is finally done. So I feel like I'm getting a hug from her. All right. Fertig. That's to my German grandmother. Finished. All right. Okay, guys. So what can I answer? Let's get over to the chat here. Okay, so Tom is kind of directing me. Wonder if you could tie her with the ties to the back. Oh yeah, Kathleen, yeah. That's a good idea. Yeah. I'd have to, yeah. So the idea, guys, is you can just take, thread and just go up and tie through it. Good idea, Kathleen. How long did it actually take? I could put beads on it on the front then. Brenda's asking, how long did it actually take for you to glue all this? Brenda, I don't know, but I didn't sleep for a few days. I don't know. It's a blur. It was just a blur. My fingers started cramping up, and I would maybe say it was days, week. Okay, I think Tom, looks like Tom answered some of your questions that you guys had. So thank you guys very much. Oh, and just hold off a little bit because we're gonna switch cameras and go over and I'll give you a little bit of a preview. Oh, wait, we have a question about how long. So yeah, so Deborah asked, how long is Frieda at the Lowell Quilt Museum? And this is in Lowell, Massachusetts. And she will be there, I think, through December 30th. I'd have to look at what day of the week that is. Okay, Tom says yes. So through the 30th, so through the end of the year. Well, 30th, not 31st. But yeah, and you can just check online to see their hours. All right, but yeah, anybody who can see her, I hope you have a chance to see her. And say hi to her from me, and I'm looking forward to getting her back home. But in the meantime, in the spot where she was, I now have a couple things to show you guys. Okay. upcoming. So 1 week from tonight, I am going to be starting on something new. I'm wrapping up one, starting on the new. This leopard is based on a photograph that my cousin's wife took. I have made a tracing of it that's right here. This is how I normally work. And then that tracing was enlarged 400%. And now I have that Xerox copy underneath. And you can see here, when I stretch that out, it's under there, and I'm in the process of tracing this. Now, I am planning on using these wonderful African prints. So this is something I'm doing for my cousin. And I kind of made this, I kind of presented this idea, like, wouldn't it be fun to make something out of the African fabric from some of those photographs? And that was taken up really quickly. So now I'm doing it. And the fly on the wall is going to be like almost all demo. Because much more demo even than Winfrieda was when in previous presentations, because I really want to show you from the very beginning. So by next week, I will have this traced. I'll have some of these fabrics cut into some smaller pieces. Should I try doing 4 weeks? Nope. And then it'll be 4 weeks long. So every week I will, I'm sure I'll do a little bit of work in between the Thursday nights, but it's going to be on Thursday nights. But I really want to make this as much for you to see how I work. And that's why I'm waiting to put anything down. I'm just kind of like just dying. I really want to just like cut this piece out. I see this thing right here that I really want to kind of put in place, coming right down like this. You know, I want to see how it's going to work. So it's going to be interesting in that this is a very realistic drawing, but I'm using very large and abstracted and bold fabrics. And I think I can do it because I'm going to show you in just a moment a fish that I did in African fabrics. And I think I can do something with that. But I have some really wonderful things to try out. It'll be 4 weeks long. I don't know how far I'll get in 4 weeks because I wouldn't be doing something this size in a normal 4 weeks. It would take me longer than that, but we'll see how far I get. If I can get the first draft done, I'll be really happy. Yep. And so tomorrow, tomorrow you're going to be receiving a link for the recording that we've done tonight. And there will also be a link for signing up for this, if you would like to do that. And also in Saturday's post, we're going to be there'll be a blog post about finishing up Winfrieda. It won't be, of course, as long or as talkative, but oh wait, there will be the video will be included. Yeah. On Saturday, yep. So, and then the fish, so that's my little preview of this one. I just wanted to show you, you know, how it's going to get started. And the fish, bring over my portable wall. Okay, there we go. Okay, and the fish will be something a bit different again as well. So what I'm going to do is basically I'm really going to start just working on camera. So it's going to be like an hour and a half or so of a demo. And I'm going to be working in this one I will be working on only during those weeks. So I'm kind of working with you to the next step. And I'll talk about anybody who signs up for this. This is going to be in mid-January, right? I think it starts mid-January for 2 weeks. And then there's a week off. And then we come back in February for 2 weeks. So you have a little bit of work time while I'm doing something else. I've got a few fish examples here. I've literally done hundreds of fish. I know it's something that I have learned from over the years. And this fish here, this one with African fabrics, see, there's my foundation fabric. It's cut off from the fabric. It's not on a background yet, but I will be talking about all that within this 4 week. It's going to be 4 weeks start to finish. And the idea here is that I'm kind of helping to guide you through making a fish, or you could make multiple fish. You know, it's really up to you what time you want to take on this. But it's something that I've found so useful. And I did hundreds of fish early on. And I know that I learned so much just by making these simple fish shapes. And yeah, okay. So, and this kind of gives you some ideas of different fish. The patterns, part of the signing up will be getting, you know, picking out a pattern, and then we'll talk about enlarging it. And I wanted to just show you what I think I'm going to be doing is taking some of these fabrics that we collect, like, you know, I know there's a lot of people out there that collect African fabrics, but you don't quite know what to do with them because it's so big and bold, and how do you, you know, work with it? And this is what has inspired me to do the leopard. Once I did this, and you know, I want to try something more. I want to take this farther. But you know, you guys might have some fabrics. Here's some Aboriginal fabrics here. These are some Jane Sassaman fabrics, all big and bold and bright. And sometimes we collect these things, but we don't know what to do with them. Then, of course, these are the K facet prints in here. And so we'll be talking about how do you know, cut some of these things apart. And then how do you apply them into something then that becomes more than what the fabric pattern is. So that's going to be the gist. All right, so now I'm going to go back over to the other computer. If there's any final questions from you guys. Okay, so Julie says, great idea for class. Good, Julie, and you even have experience. Let's see. Okay, see, Kathy, what did you say about, so Kathy just got home from 3 weeks in Africa. My load of fabric is colorful and wonderful. So excited to see you including this fabric in your presentations. Yeah, I was just like everybody else. I collected it. I didn't quite know what to do with it, and then got inspired by being asked to participate in a Quilt Africa Summit a couple years ago. And that really pushed me into trying something new. And that's what I wanted to do. I just want to try new stuff. After this lace polar bear, I'm like, what else can I try that's new? Okay, let's see. Okay, I think that's all the questions. I'm glad you guys are looking forward to the leopard. I see a lot of familiar names. So thanks for that. It's always nice. It's like this whole community out there. And again, I thank you guys for that. Oh, someone's done a lace. Sherry's done a lace penguin. Did quilt her. Okay, yeah. Sherry, send it along. Send it to the contact on my website, right, Tom? Yeah, just look for contact information, and that goes right to Tom, and you can send it. I would love to see that. Okay, guys. So I think I'm going to let you go. I know it's just like 2 hours. Okay. Someone just asked about the enlarged leopard. Yes, I am in the middle of tracing it. So what you just saw was the half of the tracing done. So I wanted to show how you can see through the fabric and then trace it. Okay. All right. Well, that stuff will be covered down the road. Tune in next week, and I will pick up where I left off with the leopard and tell you all about getting it going. And I'm very excited about that. Have a great evening, you guys. Have a great week. I hope to see some of you back next week. But thank you so much for coming today. And thank you for being so patient through some of our technical difficulties. All right. Take care, everybody. All right. Good night.